Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Tales from Seat 4A. Sitting here all by myself in the studio. But I have Isaac on the line.
Hello?
Isaac, hello.
Hello?
Hello?
Is this thing on?
It's on.
Haha. It worked.
It worked.
We're doing it.
We're doing it. How are you?
I'm okay.
I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm fine.
It's weird that you're not here.
It is weird.
I don't like it.
Well, it's what we have to do for now.
Do you think we're close?
You and I think we've grown closer over the years.
No, I mean, do you think we're close to the point where we'll all be able to be in here at the same time again?
Well, Governor Handsome said here in California that we could potentially go back to work on the 15th.
Oh, Governor Handsome, thank you. You're my idol.
Can't wait for you to be president.
Seriously. Ugh, I'm in.
We just alienated half the country.
That's fine. I'm okay with that. If you don't like Governor Handsome, then I don't want you to listen to my podcast.
We may have to dial a little bit of that back.
Bye, Keith.
Bye, Keith. No, I like Keith.
Yeah. He's not a fan
Really?
of Governor Handsome.
Why? Just out of curiosity.
You don't want to be putting people's political shit right out on the
Nobody knows who
streets.
Keith is.
That's right.
Keith is just our friend.
This episode is brought to you by Marvin Guitars.
Keith's company. You know what? Everybody's got their right to their own opinion.
That's right.
That's how it works, you know. I just find that sad because I think Governor Handsome has done a really amazing job with all of this. And
Of grooming himself?
oh God,
Okay, take it easy.
sorry,
Please.
Ooh, felt a little twinkle there.
All right, well, I'm glad I could brighten your day up.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie, I get really excited to tune in and watch his daily addresses.
Speaking of
I'd
daily
like to dress
addresses.
him.
Practice physical distancing.
What?
Oh, boo.
Boo.
So what is this? Episode 12 now, yeah?
Yeah, episode 12.
Yeah, we did it.
We did it. We got past the 4 mark. You told me that if you get past 4 in podcasting, that you'll probably do more.
Yeah, 90% of podcasts fail after the 7th episode.
Oh, well, then we got past 7.
We're almost at double that.
We are almost at double that.
And we're going to post last week's webinar tomorrow or the next day.
We are, and that'll be episode 13. And then we'll have another webinar on Friday.
I broke my headphones.
Who cares? If you can't be here, that's too bad.
Well, that'll be episode 14. And then, you know, now that...
13.
No, the one we're going to post is 13. And then Fridays will be 14.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Right. We have a bright future, basically, is what we're telling everyone.
So much to do.
It's kind of cool, though. We figured out how to do a remote one with this week's.
Yeah. Zoom, and a boom,
Zoom,
boom.
zoom, zoom, and a boom, boom.
All I wanna do is zoom, and a boom, boom.
And
So-
this week's guest had his own like mic set up and everything. It's
It's
great.
because he has his own podcast.
Oh, what's it called?
It's called Choose Your Attitude Podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. This week's is it's kind of a heart tugger. I'm not gonna lie. It's my friend Nick Strand, and I met Nick when we were out touring with Enrique Iglesias together. And we vibed real quick. Like, he was a really easygoing, easy person to just, you know, always really positive. And hey, Misty, how's your day? And
Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
actually like stopped to hear my answer, which is super weird to me.
That is weird.
Yeah, like he actually cared to,
Right.
you know, hear what I had to say.
Yeah.
And when we got off that tour, you know, we became Facebook friends, and, you know, he was one of those people that I met that I wanted to actually stay in touch with after were done with our tour. And I got to start to watch his journey, which was, by all rights, not always easy to watch. Nick was married to a wonderful woman named Brianna, and Brianna had cystic fibrosis and passed away. And Nick kind of chronicled that entire journey through Facebook, and didn't hold anything back. And then his mom actually passed away less than a year later, and also chronicled that journey. And he has written a book.
What's it called?
Loving Someone Who is Dying. Choose Your Attitude, Create Your Life. One of the things that I definitely got out of Nick, just like I said, watching from a distance, was that, despite this incredibly unsurmountable odds that they had in front of him, that his wife had this just incredible perspective. And, it was more, I think that they both realized it was a lot more about quality of life than how long she actually was around. They just really tried to make every single day worth it. And it's just a lot. It was heavy. It was heavy to watch. And I, kind of took a while to take all of his story in before I was able to put him on the podcast and feel like I was able to not weep and sob throughout doing an interview with him. Because he's just, it's incredibly inspirational, just watching from a distance and listening to his perspective now and what he's learned is just amazing. So that's our guest this week, Nick Strand.
All right. Do you want to drop any nuggets, or do you want to let them just get right at it?
I think I just want to let people get right at it.
Yeah.
It's a good episode. I want people to watch it.
Yeah.
I want them to share in the amazingness that's Nick and Brianna.
All right, flight crew, buckle up and put your seatbelts in the full and upright position and stow your tray tables, because this is episode 12.
Gentlemen, it's been a privilege flying with you.
You need to work on that a little
I'm
bit.
trying. I'm just the co-pilot here. We need a couple of flight attendants to help us out with that.
You know what? I have some flight attendant friends that we could get to record that, actually.
We should, for sure.
I can do that. I can work on that.
Speaking of friends, here comes your theme song, sung by a couple of friends of yours.
Yeah, my friends Brianna and Kate and Lord Jane.
And thanks for watching and listening, everybody.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
As always, thanks to everybody that is tuning in and watching. And
2, 3.
Tales from C4A with Misty Dawn, Misty Dawn, Misty Dawn, dun, 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 dun.
We have been trying to figure out the best way to do this.
Yeah.
Know that a lot of people have switched over to doing it this way so quickly, but he and I are so used to having people here in the studio, and it's just such a different vibe that we kind of put it off for a while of switching over to this format. But I miss talking to people.
Yes.
So,
like in person, you mean?
Yeah. Well, I just miss talking to people doing this.
Oh,
and I was
yes.
all right, we're gonna have to figure out a way around it because it's time.
Yep. That's kind of where I was at too. I'm trying to perfect it though, because the technical part of me is there's so many avenues, but it's hard because you have a different person you interview every time.
Mm-hmm. So they have a different setup themselves. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
yeah.
You've got quite the setup there. I guess
Thank
you
you.
can start by telling everybody who you are, since we just into catching up there.
I am Nicholas Strand, and I actually we toured together on what was it?
Enrique?
Yes, it was Enrique. That's right. And
that would be Iglesias.
yes.
Iglesias.
So that's how we met, and we worked together on the road family, and then Me in my personal life, I actually, my wife, Brianna Strand, beautiful human being, she had cystic fibrosis. And in May 2017, she passed away from those battles. And as one could imagine, that's difficult. But to add onto that, 2012, my mom passed away from lung cancer. And so it was kind of one of those things where the heroes in my life kind of, fell away. And so in trying to overcome the confusion of, the big changes in life that happens when you lose somebody close, we were together for almost 11 years. Through Road Family like you and others, building strength and encouragement, I found the courage to write my book, Loving Someone Who's Dying. I actually,
So proud
2000.
of you.
Oh, thank you. It's such it's a beautiful journey. And so yeah, in August, after spending a year with Dave Matthews Band and great group of people, we the time there kind of helped encourage me. And I actually getting into the story a little bit. I woke up one morning, half my face was completely paralyzed, and freaked out that it was a stroke. Come to find out, this simple thing called Bell palsy. But it was a huge wake up call in life, and how, today's our only guarantee, and how complex and fragile we are.
I'm going to ask you to
Yeah.
give me in advance if I get teary eyed or emotional, because your story is it's one that it hits me in the guts, and it reminds me of the humanity of what we do out on the road. And
Yes.
for all the pitfalls that you have being out there is that sense of family that I myself have struggled to find. And I think that's why I found the road, was
Yes.
that attraction to that family that's built. And
Acceptance.
yeah, acceptance, and the fact that we don't live close to each other. We haven't toured together since then, but instantly when I started seeing your updates and seeing what was happening, it's that innate feeling of, God, I need to help him. I need to I need to be there. How do I, especially as a a tour manager, a production coordinator kind of person, it's how do I fix this? Because that's what we do.
Yep.
We're
Yep.
fixers. And
Yep.
I've learned a lot of I don't know, I guess I've accepted a lot of the idea of giving away control, that you can't fix things for people, and being able to just take a step back and go, I can't fix this for him. I can't, there's nothing I can do other than reach out and say, hey, are you okay? Hey, is there anything that you need? and that's a big thing as an adult. So
Sometimes that simple, just reaching out to somebody, especially in my circumstance,
yeah.
is what they're actually looking for.
Yeah.
You know?
When did you and how old are you when you and Brianna met?
So I was, so we met in 2007. So I think I was like 22.
So babe.
Yeah. Yep.
And how old was she?
She was, I think she was 18 going on 19.
Just making sure that she was legal.
Yes. Yes.
How'd you guys meet?
So she was, so my whole life I've been into this kind of stuff, the video industry, and I actually in college started, so in high school actually, I was in Future Farmers of America. Future Farmers of America, as we progressed, they took advantage of my technical skills, and so I found an area to grow. I became production manager and technical director of the Washington State FFA convention. And she was actually an officer, a state officer that year. And I actually learned, so we work together as a team. My job is to work with the team to kind of create the convention, create these videos. And how kind of that sinking feeling started is during our meetings and such. One of the big things I even write in the book is I met her because she was able to have a sad face while she laughed hysterically. And it was one of those things of like, wait a minute, that is so awesome. But come to find out, about halfway through the year, as we're planning, they have this thing called a retiring address. Retiring address is their last speech. It's about a 15-minute speech that each one of the 6 officers gives to the 3,500 students that are there. And I sit down with them and I work on the technical aspects on how I can bring it to life via helping with maybe a picture in the background as I talk about something, a light change to kind of hit your emotions. And I went from professional to almost kind of like, like you said too, with that heart sob, because her speech was just so overwhelming. And it was then that I actually learned that she had cystic fibrosis. And here she is with this whole entire journey. I knew this human that was just superpower. And to hear this speech and then to find out she had cystic fibrosis, it was just kind of like, wow, like here's this person that just has all these limitations, yet doesn't show them at all.
Right. Was that something she was born with, or was it something she was diagnosed with later on?
Yeah, you're born with it. But she was diagnosed at 3 years old, and she was given. They said 13 years old is all she'd live till, yeah, she just conquered it and kept going through it. And at 29 years old, she passed away. But there was 10 years of her life that I got to be a part of. And that's kind of where this whole mission and the book comes from, is just, living off of that and reminding myself of, the quality and the positive parts of all that, even the sadness. I mean, that's
Yeah.
all good stuff.
Yeah, you have to. My therapist says something that I absolutely love, and I repeat it all the time. You have to let your heart break to actually live.
I call it embrace your reality.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things I've learned in this situation we're in right now too is as you probably understand too, is this kind of sparks your grief a little bit.
Totally.
And it's one of those things of, like you were saying, with control. We're not in control. Nobody's in control.
No.
And that's where it's scary, and that's where it's tough. And so I had probably about 5 days where I could not get up. I was just, I couldn't understand it. But then when I realized it was sparking my grief with Brianna and my mom, I was able to overcome it. But what I did is, once I figured it out, I gave myself a day or two to just feel that way.
Yep.
I embraced it. I acknowledged it. And for me, what I've learned in this whole process is doing all I can to keep everything under my bed out in the open.
Yep.
And when you wake up in the morning, it's more of build off of it.
Completely.
Yes.
I think it's probably one of the things that I found most interesting when I met you. I identified really quickly that there was something in you that was very, very similar to me, that I think that you chose a long time ago to live your life wide open and to not, you don't have those walls. Like, that it's one thing that I noticed instantly when I met you is you are an open book, like across the board. And I made that decision a long time ago. Like, I've told people for ages, if you picked up my phone or my computer, they don't have a password on them, because there's nothing on it that I'm hiding.
Bingo.
If you ask me a question, I'm going to give you the unfiltered answer. Whether you like it or not, you're going to get the blunt, unfiltered answer of what I really think or feel, because I want to be able to go to bed at night and know that I didn't cheat myself and that I didn't
Yep.
have to hide anything about myself that day. And, you know, I went through I think it's probably a little different being a woman on
Yep.
the road than a man, you know, because
Yep.
instantly there's a lot of that, oh, she's such a bitch, you know,
Yeah.
because of
Yep.
that unfiltered attitude. But,
Yep.
you know, I feel like after a few years of that, the people that I've been able to amass and keep into my life are people that were early on acceptors of that. You know, that there are a lot of people that don't understand that mentality of why shouldn't I hide things? Yeah, it's fine. If you want to hide things, that's cool. I'm just not gonna because I feel better when I don't.
Well, it's one of the things I've learned and like kind of connecting back, like you said, is you know, I think about when the smoke clears, not to, you know, like throw the fog in there, but that's one thing about the Road family that I think is huge is, you know, we're in it till the end.
Totally.
And I think that's, to be honest, that's one of my big struggles right now in the real world is a lot of people are used to hiding that. They're used to not being able to get away with not getting all the way to the end. And in road life, because we live together, we almost have to vocalize.
Totally.
And that was another thing too that I kind of put in my book is that was one huge thing that Brianna and I was able to do is when you're together, you share expression. So when you speak, we can see each other smile. You can see each other's tears. And that's kind of one of the things that I feel that social media has done to ruin us is that when you walk away from that, you remove that emotion. So what Brianna and I had to do, kind of like what we do on the road, is we're a lot more vocal. We share these things. Why? Because we don't have time to deal with them. And so you have to hit them early while they're happening.
Oh.
And it's kind of that we're not in a war, but
No, but
yeah,
sometimes I mean I get the correspondence there. Like sometimes it can feel like it. Definitely.
right. Well, we're in it together, and that's one of the things that, you know, even with what's going on, like we talked about, is that you know, everybody's got a bad day, but the thing about the road is when you look back and you're having that bad day, mind you, sometimes you get a little heckling and it's a little bit of a, you know, but everybody's there to encourage you and you know, get it done.
Totally.
Um,
I say it all the time, like you develop the only thing that I think I can compare it to is the military. You
yeah.
develop that all hands on deck. You know, if
Yep. Yep.
something dramatically is going wrong, doesn't matter what department you're from. I've
Yep.
worked in the production office and I've found myself out on the floor going,
Yep.
what can I do to help this? Can I go to
Yep.
catering and get everybody water? Can I, you know, like
Exactly.
it's it's a no fail situation. Failure's not an option. You know,
Well,
there will not ever be that there's not a show tonight.
right.
We will do what
But,
needs to be done.
but that's the thing though too is we encourage, okay, we don't encourage failure, but what we encourage is to build off that failure.
Totally.
And that's the reality that I think we've learned is at the end of the day, how was your day? What did you do well? What did not go well? Okay, let's try this again. Let's build. And I feel like life is the same thing, that by keeping all those on the table and be able to talk about them, it helps us kind of move on, or not move
Move through
on.
it. Move
Yes,
through
get
it.
through it.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. It's
Yeah.
I've kind of made it a point to strike that get over it or move on out of my vocab and, you know, really
Yes.
say move through it because that's what you're doing is moving forward.
It doesn't go away. I refer it's an open wound and all you can do is just reapply the gauze.
Yep.
It doesn't heal. It's always bleeding. Some days it's going to bleed a lot more than others, and those are the days where sometimes you just got to let it do its thing.
Yep.
But
Let me ask
yeah.
you some I'm going to go backwards a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's cool.
Because I I mean like I said I watched your journey with Brianna so closely. I was lucky enough to meet her once. One time when she came out see you. And you know what really struck me when I started reading all of your updates was that the one time that I met her, as briefly as it was, I didn't even know she was sick. I had no idea. And you
Yeah.
never led onto it either. You know, when you were asking me about, you know, flights and what hotel and blah, 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 it wasn't you just said my wife's going to come visit. And I was like, well, that's great. And you never said, no, this is really important because, you know, she's sick. And
Yeah.
I had no idea the struggle that you guys were going through together until we were well off of that tour. And before Brianna passed, you guys brought her home, right?
Yes. Yes.
How long was she in the hospital before that?
So we it was probably about a 3-month on and off journey. I hate to say people, but cystic fibrosis, when you have it, the hospital is more your doctor's office.
Right.
So going to the hospital is not to what most people see the hospital as. But it was probably a good 2 or 3 months. So prior to all that, she was on antibiotics on 24-hour IV, a little bag she called Chuck because she wanted to chuck it. But that was her clever way to win over the CF. She made CF live her life. She didn't live CF's life. And so she had I think it was 32 months of this IV bag that she just could not let go of, because, you know, so they and the IV bag was because she had picked up a super bug called abscessus, which is a microbacterium that we all get, but when you have a stronger immune system, we fight it off a lot better. Cystic fibrosis is it's a protein that is in a gate that's missing, and what that protein kind of does is it's like a salt water that we retain, and that salt water helps get the mucus out of your lungs, out of your sinuses, out of you know, your woman parts and stuff like that. So it's a full structure, but because hers is more like glue, it's like sticky tape. So it reminds me of like the fly tape you see. So the mucus actually, or the bugs stick to it,
Right.
and so they don't disappear like they do for us. So, and that just obsesses. It's just kind of ironic. It's obsessed with sticking around. But
Makes sense.
yeah. So there was a whole 32 months that she had that IV bag, and about 3 months before she passed, we think she finally got 2 cultures that did not show the abscessus.
I remember that.
Yes. So it was a exciting journey. And so the doctors were like, okay, great. Well, now let's it's kind of like whack-a-mole. You gotta hit what's up front.
Right.
And so we removed the plan is we'll stop fighting the abscessus because it's now gone. So now we can work on the CF, you know, kind of the maintenance. Now we can get a little deeper into, you know, the fight. When we remove that, the abscessus got an upper hand. And so altogether, both the CF bugs and the abscessus became even more resistant to the drugs. And so things began to fail. And it was kind of one of those things that all the weapons were used already. We're already using the big drugs. And so it was about a 3-month journey, and it was about a week and a half. So I went out to do a Zach Brown band show. It was the first show I've ever walked off. I barely even got into load in, barely met my crew chief. And the, you know, second time I actually got to say hello was me saying, you know,
You gotta go.
I got to go right now. And I went back, and it was probably about 3 or 4 days in the hospital where we were just trying to give one more stitch effort. And it was announced that the drugs aren't working and we're going backwards. And that was when we were, there's with my mom when she passed. Brianna taught us the whole journey. Brianna taught us a lot about life. And my mom was a fighter, and some of that fight was because,
those.
huh?
You seem to attract those in your life.
Yes, exactly. But it was true, and she was one of those though that wanted to fight and try to stay alive. Brianna lived a journey of more, today I want to make it full.
Yeah.
And so what was so beautiful about that, and I guess what I'm getting at, is the whole 6 months of my mom's cancer, we were doing chemo and we were trying to fight to stay alive.
Quality of life is very different.
Exactly. And that's where this happened. And when we found out that, okay, we can keep throwing the meds at you, but we don't think it's going to work, or we can go home and have 3 days, or we didn't know how long, but we could go home and live it there without the drugs. We can win this thing.
Right.
And that's what we did.
That's one thing that sticks out to me. When I think back to watching you guys go through that journey, is it was very, very apparent that for Brianna, her quality of life was the most important thing. It was,
Clearly.
I've got today, and
Yep.
I'm gonna make today. It's not about fighting for tomorrow. It's, I need to live right now. And I've spent probably more hours than you could imagine thinking about what growing up as a young woman, that being faced with that reality, and how that shapes the rest of your life, like I can't imagine, I guess, being an 18-year-old and
Yep.
experiencing those things, and then, meeting a Nick and going, well, I guess I better fucking get married because I love that. And like, today is about today. So,
Yep.
like, it just, it's admirable that I look at it and I go, man, I need to start living more that way. And, I've made that process in my head of, don't worry about tomorrow, because you know what? None of us are promised it.
Nope.
And I, not that it's even remotely the same journey that you guys went through, but I lost my dad at a very, very young age. I was 10 months old, and he passed away from cancer. And I've spent a lot of time in my life thinking about how that shaped my relationships with living for today, as well as my relationships with death. I have found, and it's come the hard way, because I have found I have a very different way of looking at death than a lot of people. And it's really weird when you realize that. Like,
but it's so
when
true.
when someone, someone close to me loses someone, I don't know how to react to it. The tears and the, their process, I don't know what to do with that, because my relationship with death just looks so different. I faced it as such a young person, and it was always something very prevalent in my life, that played a part in every single day. And, I was always one that, when my mom brought my dad up, it was, well, let me ask questions about him. I want to know about him, and I want to hear like the good stories of times that they had. And it was never that the crying in the morning. And it's a very, as an adult, it's been a very interesting experience to watch people around me deal with death and the different processes.
It's crazy. I want to touch back one about the quality, and then go into what you said about the death. Is that was actually one of Brianna's biggest struggles with doctors, and doctors had with her. And what made the doctor, Paul Pottinger, who actually wrote the foreword in our book, he was Brianna's infectious disease doctor. And what he had that was amazing is he understood the quality over quantity. And when I say that, what was amazing is if Brianna took the full scientific dosage to survive or to have the best case scenario, it was 8+ hours of day to sit there and do meds.
Wow.
So Brianna, and that was on just maintenance. That's not on attack mode.
It's not life.
No. So Brianna said, well, here's the deal. CF only gets this much time of my day. Doctors would panic because they're going, well, wait a minute. But here's the thing. You couldn't tell her no because of the smile she had when she did it. And it was because she was in control, and she was so right, because her 29 years of life was packed full of amazing memories that some that at 15 years or whatever are just struggling and fighting the entire time. And so I compare that to my mom's 6 months of fighting with cancer. Is it was beautiful time, but a lot of it was fighting to try to heal, when Brianna just was like, I can't control, so we're just gonna do what we can. We're gonna live. And like you said, is when she came, I forget what year that was. Was that 2016 or 17?
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah. We lose track of time on the road. Yeah. Yeah. But no, she was fragile then. And but she just kept going. And that's what was important.
Like I said, I never had one inkling that she was
right
at all.
Now to talk about that and transition into the death part now, she never denied the subject. And when I say that, it was something, I call it pillow talks in the book. These were things that we actually talked about.
Yeah, you have to. You know, they're reality. You have to. They're a reality to you. And it's not in 50 years this is going to happen. It can happen anytime to either one of you, honestly.
Anybody.
Yeah.
And that's one of the weird things is here we are as a nation, we go to school, and I don't know about your schooling, but from what I've seen, sex and drugs are the biggest human things we learn.
Absolutely.
But never once.
A real small town. That's all there is to do.
Yeah, right. But never once does anybody learn about death.
Oh, they don't teach you those things. They don't teach you any of that.
And one would say, well, religion. Well, take that away. This is a fact. We're all going to die. Some people don't have sex. Some people have never. I myself have never had a drug in my life. But
I
here's
cannot say the same.
But it doesn't matter. But that's a character for you, and that's something that you're able to build off of. Once again, embrace that reality. Yeah. We all live a life, and we do different things to learn to build the character we become. And nobody is perfect. I like to say I'm perfectly imperfect.
I say that quite often as well.
Yes.
Not about you, about me.
Oh, right. Yeah. But no, it's one of those things of like, because we made it comfortable to be uncomfortable, we were able to feel better in these times. And I feel like you said, is that vulnerability that we have, and that vulnerability, I think Brianna and I both shared that, which made us even easier to get deeper into that vulnerability and have to live a little bit more on top of the struggle. It helps to keep the elephant entertained, so that way you're always building and it's never slipped under the rug. And right now, especially this time, kind of pull some of those things out. And so it's been nice to kind of reapproach a little deeper on some of those things. But death is not a negative subject. It's actually very positive. And
I want to ask
yeah,
you a question because it's
yeah,
to this day one of my favorite quotes. Are you familiar with the Neil Gaiman quote about the things they don't teach you?
I don't know if I've heard it.
I'm going to read it to you, and I
Okay.
think that it will resonate incredibly to you. I've been making a list of things that they don't teach you in school. They don't teach you how to love somebody. They don't teach you how to be famous. They don't teach you how to be rich, and they don't teach you how to be poor. They don't teach you how to walk away from someone you don't love anymore. They don't teach you how to know what's going on in someone else's mind. They don't teach you what to say to someone who's dying, and they don't teach you anything worth knowing.
Wow.
It's from a book of his called The Kindly Ones, and to me it's one of the most profound things that I've actually tried to let guide my life is that, yeah, you're right. We don't get taught any
Yeah.
of these things, and we have to figure them out on our own. And they're not scary conversations if
You
we're
know,
just willing to have them.
right. And you say, so what's crazy is culture almost sets us up for failure.
Absolutely. 100%.
Because one of the biggest things I've learned since Brianna's passing too is that whole thing of perspective. Because here's the catch. Culture trains us because your mom or those around you as you grow up have those emotions when those things are talked about. So you learn unintentionally
Totally.
how to react.
Yeah.
But those are the things that we should be talking about. And what's crazy is after Brianna's passed, after my mom passed, it's actually been very difficult with with those family members because it's created a void, not in us, but in the connection of how to handle that death or how to handle that uncomfortable. And by no means is that blaming anybody. They're not doing anything wrong.
No, they're
It's just
doing what they've learned.
exactly. And it's a struggle it's a whole relationship with yourself, and everybody has this different relationship. And so that's my thing is I try to exemplify that and bring that out, and that's I've only feel like I've been able to do that with Brianna's lesson, because when Brianna was around, I was like my mom, where I was fighting the whole time to keep Brianna around.
Right.
And it wasn't until she passed that I was like, wow, look at all these things that I don't want to say I regret, but look at all these things we could have done.
Right.
If I wasn't fighting the whole time.
Yep. It's it's almost scary to have that in retrospect and to understand and to look back and see what it was that she was fighting for that whole time, what she was fighting so hard to get people to understand, and to know that you just wish you could have understood it just a tiny bit more,
And the best part is she did it so effortlessly.
Completely.
That's the crazy part.
But Nick, I have to say, it's one of the things that I have admired about watching your journey is I know that it hasn't been effortless, but the way that you have chosen to share it with everyone has seemed effortless. I know that sitting and typing out some of the things that you've written, or sitting and writing that book took a lot of effort, but you have found a way to kind of push it out to your group of trusted individuals and make it seem effortless really isn't the right word for it, but you've definitely set an example, I feel like, for a lot of people of it's okay to talk about how you feel. That's something I struggled with for a long time when I started being a lot more vocal about my own mental health and other people's mental health. I had a lot of people that would reach out to me and be like, I can't believe that you're talking about that. Like, that no one's going to hire you ever again, right? Like they hear you talking about these things, they think you're crazy. I'm like, I am crazy. It's fine. Guess what? I'm not the only one in the world that's crazy. I'm not the only one in the world that's struggled, and you aren't
Yeah.
either.
And in their head, they're talking about the exact same thing, but they're just, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I'm like, but I wouldn't be able to forgive myself if I found out that somebody that was dealing with the same struggles that I was dealing with didn't make it through them, and that me not talking had an impact on that. The fact that
Yeah.
me opening up that conversation means that somebody made it through one more day, and I feel like you have done very, very similar things. Like I almost, one thing that I think about when I think about you is you are the polar opposite of toxic masculinity. Like if I feel like if there were a way that I could put you on a giant stage and let you talk to men about that it's okay to talk about your emotions. It's
Yes.
okay to feel, and you have to let yourself feel them. And you have
Yep.
to let yourself experience them. And it's okay to apologize for them later if you need to. Like
Exactly like you said, one of the biggest things, and you just said that, is the feeling you feel is the most accurate feeling you're going to feel.
Yes.
How many times do you think it's weird that I'm feeling this way? Yes, you're human. So don't focus on why you're feeling that way. Don't focus on whether it's right to feel that way.
Right. Focus on why you're feeling that way.
Yeah, focus on being comfortable with that feeling.
Yep.
It's amazing. One of the struggles that I talk about in the book as well is the energy kind of sparked, obviously from my love for Brianna, but I actually have so she created a quote, choose your attitude, create your life. And I have it handwritten on my arm with a peacock feather. Her favorite color was green, mine was blue. And then on this arm is the Pacific Northwest trees. And I've got a little trail here, mom's favorite quote with footprints in the sand. Wow. Well, when people would ask me what they mean, I would say it with a smile. This is
right.
my wife who passed away. This is my mom. But you say death,
and people don't know what to do with that.
No, and you say it with a smile, and they're become disconnected because that feeling they've never allowed a relationship to grow with.
Yep.
And most recently it's funny because I've named my feelings.
You know what?
I have.
That's the number one thing a therapist will tell you to do. Give them a name. You got to name it to tame it.
Exactly. Well, it's crazy. I've got my adult, I've got my child, and I've got the mediator.
Yep.
The adult understands from outside. Okay, you have every right to feel this way.
Right.
You have the child that's like, but I want more. I want candy. Why aren't you letting me have candy? But then you have the mediator in between going, okay, we got to figure this out.
Right.
And that's the most difficult part, I think, is the mediator brain. And that's one of the things that, kind of going back to how people reacted in the family after, I don't blame them for that feeling. Because the adult me understands that those actions they didn't necessarily have control of or intentionally do. It was just a reaction in a trauma situation. Totally. So I can't hold that against them. Doesn't mean that my feelings weren't hurt.
Absolutely.
But to understand and acknowledge that feeling, even though it was a negative feeling, was not it was actually a positive feeling. Does that make sense? Like
it does, yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how to better explain that.
Well, I mean, basically, I think it's very simple. It comes down to everybody has the right to process things their own way. everyone also has the right to ask other people for clarification on their process and to have a middle ground to that.
Yeah.
You know, and that hopefully, you know, if it's a functional kind of a relationship, you can have that conversation and both parties can learn from it about where the other's coming from, you know, and further, you know, further their growth into maybe being able to have an honest conversation with themselves about their feelings and, you know.
It's amazing. After Brianna and my mom passed, one of the biggest questions everybody asks is, how are you feeling? And
well, how long do you have?
yeah, exactly.
I mean, every minute that feeling's different, you know,
exactly.
every second of every day that
But-
process is ever changing.
But a lot of the time they're asking that question because they themselves are uncomfortable.
Totally.
And so they're trying to give a positive gesture,
Yep.
but what they're realizing they're not doing is they're actually making it harder on the person that's affected by it, because they're having to judge, okay, wait a minute. Do you want the bombshell?
Yeah, do you want the actual answer?
Yeah.
or do you want to be like, well, things are rough, but I'm hanging in there.
Right.
You know, I feel like that's I mean, that's a huge one that we're all experiencing right now, especially. You know, oh, how are you doing today? I haven't left my house in 72 days.
Right.
What answer do you want? Like, do you
somet-
really want to hear how I feel? Or are you just
Right.
checking in?
So it's a two-way thing too, and sometimes it's even better to maybe not ask the question.
I agree. I have long been a person, and it makes a lot of people crazy because I don't say, hey, how you doing? As a salutation, because it's not one.
Right.
Hey, how you doing? Is a question.
Yeah.
And if I ask you that question, I expect you to stop and actually tell me. You don't go,
Right.
okay, and just keep walking.
Exactly.
If I don't want to hear it, I'll just be like, hey, and just keep walking myself.
So then one would ask, well, how do you reach out and make it feel like, you know, you're helping them? Well, to be honest, sometimes all the people want to know is that you're there.
Exactly.
So, you know, just reaching out, hey, I'm thinking about you. Hope you're well.
You know, that's something that I definitely tried doing after Brianna passed with you was I don't have anything to fix it. I don't have anything to say to some grand thing that you're just going to wake up and feel great. Like, hey, I'm here. That's all I need to let you know. And I think that probably a lot of that, like I said, comes from a different relationship with death than most people. Like, I understand that level of every second feeling different, you know? It's you're going to go through peaks, you're going to go through valleys. It's not linear. It's not like, oh, I'm going to, you know, chug along at depressed and then I'm going to slowly move up to maybe a little less depressed. It doesn't work that way.
No, my mission, I may talk about all this stuff, but to be honest, it's that adult brain talking to my child brain.
Totally.
So, you know, I may act like I know all the things. No, I walk away from this and I process going, you know, wait, that's why I'm feeling this. Like, and it comes back and forth. And like I said, you know, I had 5 days when this whole thing hit where I got lost and confused. But I will say this too. You made a comment about, you know, my our situation is different than comparatively. One of the craziest, or not the craziest, but the best quotes that I heard is in the my first for my podcast, Choose Your Attitude podcast. The first episode is a friend of mine who lost her leg.
Rock climber.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I asked her a question. I said, okay, Andrea, her name is Andrea, you know, here you are overcoming losing a leg, this relationship with a leg that no longer is there, the trauma with having to learn how to walk again, and all these people around you casting you up like a hero. How do you do that? How do you feel? And she said, you know what? It's interesting. I may have lost my leg, but the person next to me is having a hard time paying bills. the person next to me is having a hard time with the relationship. And in our brains, it's all level.
Yeah. That's a big one right now, of trying to express that across the board, that
Yes.
this is a time for people to learn that the struggles are level. You know,
Yeah.
your struggle is not harder than mine. Mine is not harder than yours.
Nope.
That at the end of the day, they are still struggles. They are things that keep us awake at night if we let them.
Yep.
They are things that prevent us from moving forward in our lives. You know, we can be our own biggest roadblocks if we don't deal. And every single person has a struggle, no matter who
Everybody.
you are, no matter how much money you have, or,
Yep.
you know, if you're in the most perfect relationship in the world. Like, there is not a single person that doesn't wake up in the morning with one thing on their mind going,
Yep.
ooh.
I refer it to drowning. So here we are in a pool. It could be 3 feet of water. It could be 4 feet of water. Hopefully, we don't have to have any height issues there. But so let's say for me, I'm 6 foot tall. I'm in 5 feet of water. You've got all these people around you, and of course, in my brain, I know that I am above the water.
Right.
But if I start to fall back and I start to drown, and I can't get a step forward to get above the water, it does not matter how much everybody around me is yelling, all you got to do is stand up. Everybody's going, all you got to do is stand up. You're 2 feet away from the edge. But in your head, the only thing you are doing is trying to survive.
Yep.
And so that struggle is the only thing you have. And so that's kind of what I look at it as is, you know, no matter what the struggle is, that's your focus that you're doing. So if you can learn and embrace that and become comfortable with how you react to things, what your triggers are and stuff like that, it helps you, build to be a better person. At the same time, not being hard on yourself when a feeling or something like that happens. I some people think I'm crazy sometimes, but I feel empathy for like murderers and such. There's crazy people out there, don't get me wrong.
There are, but a lot of them, something happened to make them that way. You know?
And I would almost guarantee that after it happened, there's some regret, or maybe not even the word regret, but there's some empathy and feel, but it's already happened. And so the process is not about what you've done, but what you're doing.
Yep. I could not agree more with that one. I mean, I guess I won't necessarily equate it to murder, but I get that completely.
Well,
I also have those moments of like, you see something on the news and you're like, oh my God, I feel so terrible for everyone involved in that. Not just, the victims' families, like the murderers' families,
Yeah. And I don't say murderer as a way to like make them up above anybody else.
Yeah, no.
It's just saying that we all make mistakes, and it's unfair. And a lot of the times whenever you compare it to be unfair is usually because you are uncomfortable in that scenario.
Totally.
Or you're uncomfortable with that. And that's one of the biggest things I've learned. Just because I've never done drugs, it's unfair for me to judge you for doing drugs, because I know I've done things that weren't drugs.
Right. That I would be like, Nick, what?
Bingo. Exactly.
One of the most powerful things that I feel like I've ever read, I once read an article that was written by Dylan Klebold's mom. Dylan Klebold was one of the shooters in Columbine, the first high school mass shooting, which took place when I was in high school, actually. So I remember going into reading. It was, believe it or not, it was an Oprah magazine.
Oh, wow.
And I remember going into like looking at this article, and I'm like, I want to fucking read this article. Like this woman's kid, like, went into a school and, just mowed down his classmates. Like,
Yeah.
Something had to make him that way. Like his mom had to have something to do with this. And I remember sitting and reading it and finishing reading it and being in absolute tears of, I believe that it was entitled I Will Never Understand.
Yeah.
And it went through her entire process and her emotions of, what could I have done differently? What did I do wrong? What led my child down this path? How did I not see this? And I think it was the first time that I ever had that realization of what the other side of that looks like. We're
Yeah.
always so quick to look at people in scenarios like that and not have that empathy.
I think some of that. So one of the things that I relate that to, as you say that, is in Washington State, they just announced that they're going to share sexual education earlier in the grades. Now, of course, a lot of parents are like, "Wait, no, that's way too early." I don't think so. The only reason I say that again,
Kids know about sex.
they do, and to be honest, I think what's happens is it's the parent wanting to be the respected person to come to, but what they don't realize they're doing is they're actually shutting their kid down to be able to communicate.
Totally.
Because when you become socially comfortable to speak, it's not by keeping your kid inside the house. It's letting them go to the playground and play with everybody. It's letting them interact. And yes, these subjects are very difficult, but I feel like it's very important to allow them to learn how to share their feelings, because there is going to be that one time, like that one of those kids that they want to share their feelings, but they don't know who they can share it with because they're in fear they're going to get in trouble or it's
Right.
inappropriate.
Well, and it's almost, at that point when you're having that conversation with children of a certain age, it's giving them permission to feel.
Bingo.
Like
Yep.
children at that developmental age are used to being told it's okay and being given permission. The one thing that we forget to give them permission to do is to have feelings.
Exactly.
And, that's why we tend to have, like my generation, there's probably more of us in therapy than not, to be honest, because we were never given that permission.
Yeah.
We were never encouraged to share our feelings. Generation X is an entire generation of people that were taught to keep it in their brain and just stay miserable,
And I think, it's one of those things where we have to learn how to be able to, and that's for me, is like I like to share it, and I do know that it kind of, a lot of people run away from it, but I think what people don't realize is a lot of times those depressions are because, not because they aren't aware, the person feeling that way, it's more because they can't find somebody to share it with because they're in fear. For example, with me, I have a hard time now. Mind you, I'm usually open because I've learned that because there was about 3 months that I actually switched, and I wouldn't say who this was. It's a woman who's very close to me.
Right.
I didn't, but then all of a sudden I was having to change. And so what and I'm not saying you shouldn't change for others and incorporate, but the problem is that's a core feeling. And you shouldn't have to hide your truth, because what that does is it builds up a resistance, and so when and if something real happens, they can't share it when they need to.
Yeah, they're repressed.
Exactly.
Totally.
And so that's these are yeah.
Well, we have been on here for almost an hour already.
I know, right?
That. So the book, where can people find the book?
ChooseYourAttitude.com. That was one of the things Brianna, in her amazing ability, she knew that she led by example, but she knew that sometimes without something physical, they have nothing to go off of or anything. And one of her biggest things is she loved quotes. She put them all over the fridge. And so before she passed, one of the biggest things she made is she made a quote: "Choose your attitude, create your life." And that's what she lived off of, and that's what the whole journey. That's what I live off of now, and it's so simple to say, but it's so powerful.
It's very simple to say, and it's super powerful. And it only takes 7 days to make something a habit. So if you say it to yourself 7 days in a row, it's
just
easy to live too.
Your first decision is getting out of bed, and we know how that
Totally.
goes if you don't get out. Yep.
Sometimes some mornings, I'm not gonna lie, it's I put one foot on the ground and then I wait 5 more minutes and I put another foot on the ground and then I make myself sit up and then I make myself stand up, and it's a process. And other mornings I can jump up, but you know what? It's all in making that decision. I'm not gonna lay here. I'm gonna put one foot in front of the other, and
it's the only thing we're in control of.
Absolutely. I tell myself that every single day.
And it's the most difficult thing.
It absolutely is. I feel like I could sit here honestly for hours.
Agreed.
Because like I said, I identified very quickly after meeting you that you had
Thank you.
something inside that I have so much respect for anybody that can take a situation that is not ideal and is not everything they ever wished it to be. And, just take that and use it for their own development, but then to also give that to others. Like, I think that
means the world.
You're kind of in the same phase of life as I am, where I'm realizing that service to others is just something really, really, really special.
Oh my gosh. That's the fire. That's why hearing your words like that, that's what keeps me going and reminds me, that, you are something. And at the same time, at the end of the day, we want to make community better.
Totally.
And it's huge to be able to have that and share that. And like I said, I'm just doing this because this is what's helping me get through life. And
I do these podcasts.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's my own form of therapy.
Yes, exactly. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'm so happy that you came to do this.
Thanks for inviting me.
From the distance, our very long distance episode.
Yes.
And I am really excited to read this book, and I'm really excited to dive into it.
I wanted to say too that if there's more than just the book, I know it's because it's loving someone who's dying, it can be heavy. I did also create quotes on a fridge, which is an illustration with Brianna and her love for quotes in an interactive way to kind of help you go through that. And then I've also created shirts with the Choose Your Attitude. I call it CYA, wear it, share it. So it's a good reminder that, you just got to choose your attitude, but then at the same time, share it with others. And So
if somebody like Brianna could wake up every day and do it, then I sure as hell can do it too.
I mean, right? Exactly.
Yep. Well, I'm gonna sign off and say goodbye, and I'll make sure to post all of your information.
I appreciate it.
So that everybody knows where to find you at. And thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. It was so good to see you.
You too.
All right.
You too. All right. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
2, 3. Tales from C4A with Misty Dawn, Misty Dawn, Misty Dawn, dun 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 dun.